Hi, I'm here with Gavin Burton, who's the board member of the UK Identity Fraud Advisory. He's joined me here at Identity Week Europe 2024 at the Rye in Amsterdam. It's great to meet you, Gavin.
Nice to meet you.
I know you've been at these events for years, SDW when it was called this. Have you seen, fraud evolve, and what are the top threats today?
Well, certainly in terms of identity fraud, you've still got counterfeit documents that are out there. But when you look at things like ID verification technology, there's also the threats of imposters. So people using other people's documents or stolen documents. And I certainly know from past police experience that identity documents were a really valued commodity. We've also kind of evolved a bit, certainly with AI and deepfake generated documents as well. So that creates a completely different threat because you have just a digital image of a document where you could put any person's data on it. And in the world of massive data leaks, it's a nasty threat to have genuine people's details on a deepfake generated document. And fraudsters will always take the lane of least resistance, or will find and probe and find a hole in somebody's systems, and using those type of documents is clearly a threat at the moment.
Is the current policy and regulation really tackling these problems and putting the onus on organisations and government to ensure they have reasonable procedures in place?
To a certain extent, I think when you look at ID verification, and I can only really speak for the UK, but we do have regulations in terms of right to rent, right to work, where ID verification checks have to be made. But actually, the technology can make it much faster, can make it much safer, and the sheer volume of checks that are being conducted is phenomenal. So that's really where technology comes into its own, really.
Yeah, technology has just evolved so much. What advice would you give to end users and customers still who have to kind of spot the signs of fraud themselves to avoid, being entrapped by attacks and fraudsters?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult because if somebody's been a victim of an identity fraud, let's say, or their identity has been compromised in some kind of way, they don't often realise until they've got a debt collector's letter. And by that time, their identity has already been used. A fraudster may have already got a product or a service. And the people who've provided that product or service think it's you that's done it. So they're going to be coming knocking at your door. So in terms of preventative action, what I would say is always keep an eye on your credit profile. Always keep your identity documents safe. Treat them as a valued commodity because criminals treat them as a valued commodity. Don't post them online. Don't share those images with anyone. And also, it's about giving yourself a little bit of a kind of digital detox and a digital kind of MOT. So refresh passwords, make sure they're strong passwords as well, and use password managers, which is always really good. So there are lots of things that an individual can do, ranging from cutting up your mail and making sure your personal data doesn't go anywhere, to making sure that your ID document is really, really secure. And at least that way, in some respects, you can at least take steps to mitigate yourself becoming a victim of fraud. I mean, I've been a victim of fraud a number of times before. It just happens to people, but there are steps that you can take.
Yeah, it can happen to anyone, not just the elderly or vulnerable groups. In sectors like travel then, do we need additional kind of physical checks by border force officers, police, or, can we rely on the technology to do that for us?
The technology can be very accurate, certainly where you've got optical recognition and it's cross-matching with the data that's on a chip. Excellent, and that's the sort of thing that we see at borders as well. But obviously with borders, you're seeing more e-gates, so you might not necessarily see as much fraud from a border guard perspective, let's say. There is definitely a real need for training, purely from the point of view that you've now got people working within identity verification technology that have been, they may not have had that background in identity before, and you could potentially have somebody with a passport with a broken chip, for example. They're going through that technical process, but then they drop out. And that person who's sitting in the background with the company has to do the check on an image of a document, and they're going to need to understand that what is necessarily on the TV screen in front of them may not be the same as what a physical document is. Do you see what I mean? So you need to kind of understand the physical features on a physical document to know how they react in the right way to then make an assumption, or not an assumption, but a judgment call when you're looking at a document on a video screen. Because you've got to account for things like image compression and digital artifacts. Lighting is a big factor as well, and blur, things like that.
That's really interesting. So it's almost like we're used to physical documents, and that can impact how we spot fraud in an EID or
Yeah, absolutely. It's about. It's not just simply a case of, right, I'm going to employ person X, and they can just look at examine an ID document if it falls out of the system. Those people will need a degree of training, which, I mean, GPG 45 in the UK says it's there to do in any case for identity profiles. But it strengthens the check that's been done, because at some point somebody's ID check may end up going to a person. So we've got this blend of digital and physical checking.
Great, thank you so much for talking to me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference tomorrow, all the networking.
Lovely, thank you.